Hi, Sonja. This is Karen with Art to Ride. Will is still in Europe. In fact, I think he's in Belgium right now. He'll be there till the end of the month giving his riding clinic, so I'm covering for him. And I do apologize that you had to wait a little while to get your video back, but it's been very busy covering for him and keeping up with my own work. So anyway, this is Sensational. Hi. Your 11-year-old thoroughbred. I see that you gave me that information. And the first thing that I would comment and notice is that your chambon can be tightened a little bit more. Now, the length that you have it right now is the length that we put on a horse that's just learning to do this, because you don't want it so tight that they go to lift their head at all and they hit it, and they can often panic and hit the end of that, and sometimes they'll go upwards instead of softening downwards. So you do want to be very careful about that, and it looks like you have. But it does look like she's being very respectful of it. It doesn't look like she would overreact to it. So I would certainly try shortening it a few more holes, because rarely is she running into the end of it. So the rule of thumb is she went a little high there, but I'm going to wait till she gets right a little bit lower, about right there. When her pole gets about the level with her withers, that's when you want it to start activating, once the horse gets used to what you're doing. So go ahead and shorten it a little bit. You can have her stand there and just make sure that it's not pulling the head down below the wither. But she does need a little bit more of a indication not to hollow. Now, I do believe you made a comment that if you try to push her on and push her out, she just speeds up. So you're having a hard time getting her impulsed into the contact. A couple of things that I could recommend here, and this goes with anybody that's lunging, is to use the size of your circle. If you get a little closer to her, shorten your line, get a little closer to her, sometimes the fact that you're closer will keep her a little bit more active, but it will also keep her more into the consistent contact with your hand. You'll see that sometimes, usually it's on this part of the circle that's coming around, she gives up all the contact, like right there, and it's pretty consistent. And horses will often do this. It's always one spot that they give up the contact. Now, if you're closer to her with a shorter line, then she will pay a little more attention to you. And you can regulate the size of the circle easier. So if you're closer to her and she wants to speed off, then just stop walking on the circle. And the fact that the circle is smaller will make her think twice about getting faster, and it'll get her more about using that inside hind leg and coming through. Now, what you also have to work on a little bit too is that when you create that energy behind, you've got to get the contact and ask her to soften once you've created that energy. So if you could picture this, that you get her pushing more behind, and then your hand in front limits where the energy goes, you want it to soften and work over the back, and then she'll go deeper, and then she'll slow down. And so I know it can be tough with the thoroughbreds, because sometimes they'll just deal with everything by speeding up. Now, I want to come back to talking about the size of the circle, though. The horse's reward is rewarded when you make the circle bigger. That's because it's easier for them to move. They don't have to work so hard. So they see that as a reward. We're always looking for some way to reward the horse when it's done something correctly. So if the horse is doing well, then you let the circle out and see if they can keep it. And if not, then just quit walking. Like if you were to quit walking right there and let her come into the end of the line, much like we're trying to do the same thing as if we ride, we send the horse forward, and we don't pull back with the reins, but we just stop with the reins. We quit following forward, just like side reins do. Side reins can't pull the horse backwards. So you're trying to emulate the same thing, and you can do that with how much you walk with the horse or not. Now, when the horses get really good at this, you don't have to walk much at all. You can pretty much stand in the center of the circle. They stay out on the end of the line, and they stay stretched. But while you're working on it, you're going to need to get a little closer to her and maybe walk so your circle is bigger, But if she tries to speed off, then just stop walking. So the circle is smaller and she won't want to speed off because it's a lot more work. So that's a good way to play with what you can do with her. And I'm sure Will has said this before, that lunging is like playing an instrument. It's a little here, a little there. And what's really fascinating about lunging is you see the result immediately. And you can actually visually see the results versus when you ride them, you're feeling it. But we use some of the same principles when we ride them, certainly by creating the energy from the back hind legs and coming over the back into our hands, but with a softening of the jaw and the poll. Now, the one good thing that I'm seeing, and maybe that's why you have her in a chambon, is that she's not ducking way behind the contact. So when you lunge, you have three choices. One is to use a chambon, which is really good if the horse has been really inverted, really wants to go upside down, and also that they've learned to duck behind the contact, get behind the bit. Then it's a really good time to use a chambon just to limit how much she can invert and raise her head. And then you can work on the softening of the mouth and getting her to stretch. Now, if it's not typical for her to get behind the bit, you might want to try side reins with her, because that will help you to keep the mouth a little softer. Now, you can do that with or without the chambon. Even if you use side reins, I'd still first shorten the chambon and then put the side reins on. Now, the side reins are a little bit like the chambon. You want them to be active when she gets all the way down. You don't want them too tight. When she starts to stretch, you want the nose to be able to come out. So they're on the long side. And once again, you're trying to create that impulsion so she comes forward into the contact instead of pulling the contact back to her. Just like in riding, we want the horse to come forward into our contact with that forward feel, not us pulling the nose backwards. Now, the third thing you can do, and some horses, either they're better at it or they're more amiable about it, but you can simply put the lunge line through the bit on this side over her head and clip it to the bit on the other side. Now, the benefit of that is that you won't pull the bit through her mouth, and it also teaches her about pull pressure, which actually the chambon does also. So this is what you're lacking right now, is impulsion. And then capturing that impulsion with your rein, which is your lunge line. So lunging is like riding. Your whip is your leg. And I like the fact that you keep your leg on, meaning that you keep your whip up and behind her, at least from what I can tell. It's really hard because I can barely see your lunge whip, but it looks like you always keep it there. So you're always keeping the horse in that triangle between the whip and the lunge line. But you do need to start experimenting. Number one, tighten the chambon, just a couple holes at a time. You don't want her to panic about it, but you also want the chambon to be more effective. Number two, if that doesn't work, then you can add the side reins. Well, actually, I'd like to see you play with the size of the circle a little bit. Set her on a bit, get a little closer to her to begin with, send her on, and make the circle a little smaller so she has to work a little harder, so she might think twice about going so fast and overreacting. But again, we can only comment on what we see at the moment, and when you try things, we're not there to comment on it. But use your good judgment. If she goes too ballistic, then you're just going to have to settle her down and try a different approach. But she may be one of those horses that if you bring the chambon down a little bit, and then you add the side reins if that doesn't work, and slowly work on how much contact you have in the side reins, that may be beneficial too. But if they have that tendency to get really behind the contact, then side reins don't work as well as the chambon. But she seems to be quite responsive to you. So I get this feeling if you just got a little closer to her, made the circle a little bit smaller, and then rewarded her when she really came through and stretched. A lot of times when you see this up and down is they truly haven't come through and connected over their back. When they do that, they tend to really stay down there. Now that was a nice downward transition. But see, again, her neck is just flat. You want her to get it to activate a little more over the top line. So I'll pass this along because I thought it was absolutely fascinating. I had Dr. Joanna Robson down because she does work on our horses. She's a great chiropractor and acupuncture, and she works a lot with Chinese herbs and looking at the whole horse, checking the tongue, checking the whole system of the horse. And she's really, really good. And she is highly educated. And she attended a lecture by Dr. Hilary Clayton. If nobody knows of her, she's pretty well respected worldwide. Her research is unbiased. And it takes a lot of effort and a lot of time to get all of this done and then get it published. And so she does lectures about it, and Joanna attended one of these. And she really talked about the importance of stretching the horse and getting them to go over their back. So once again, we have more and more people and vets, and Dr. Hilary Clayton has a PhD. So she's, I would assume, quite intelligent. And from what I've read, she makes some very good arguments, and they seem to make sense. So she, again, and I won't talk about all the muscles that you have to get activated and what they use, because I'm sure that I couldn't repeat them in the same way that I heard them. But I'm just going to give you the layman's synopsis of what I learned. And that is that she understands the importance of getting the horse to work over the top line and how the stretching helps them achieve that, because it helps to lift the back up and the leg can swing under. And that's the only time that the horse can start to get underneath and absorb more of the weight of the horse. And that lightens eventually the front end. And they talked about the difference of how Western horses are ridden, because you would say, well, aren't they stretched also? Well, there is a difference in a lot of what you see in the Western riding. I'm not saying all of it, but I think it's very typical that you see them holding their neck much like her, where it's very flat. And even though it's stretched, there's no feeling of energy coming all the way over the top line, up through the neck, over a softened pull and softened jaw into your hand. So again, feel a little bit more comfortable about asking her to bring the nose in to soften the jaw and create a little bit more flexion, and of course, you need to have more impulsion to make that happen too. So back to what I was saying. When you ride a Western horse and you just kind of let the reins drop and everything gets a little bit flat, you're actually not improving and working the top line, and you're not getting the neck involved in what you're trying to achieve. So we want the horse to use the whole body. And that's what it means by getting it connected. It's really surprising how the front end and the hind end can be doing two different things, and the horse doesn't know any better. So it's our job to get them in a frame where they then are encouraged to use the right muscles. And then once those get stronger, then the horse gets more comfortable with it, and then they start developing the top line quite nicely. Now, the other thing that she commented on one of her research, and I thought this was quite interesting, is that we haven't really done that yet, and we should with Dr. Robson, but to show what you can be doing on the ground with the hip tucks and the belly lifts. Many of you probably already know about that, but the research showed that even horses that didn't get out of their stalls very much still could improve their top line, because it does activate the muscles. Now, the one answer I don't have for you is how often would you do it? I wasn't told if they did it 2-3 times a day. I tend to do it after I ride, and I do it about 3 times, hip tucks, belly lifts. And the belly lifts, you can also move your hands further right under the sternum and see if you can get them to lift right at the base of the withers, because that's, again, what you're trying to activate when you ride. It's what you're trying to get her to activate a little bit here too when you're lunging her. So it looks like you have a good relationship with her. You're very sensitive to her. I know thoroughbreds requires a lot of tactfulness sometimes. So if you look at right there, the level of her head, the chambon should have been activated. So see how high that she can go with her head and it's still not activated? So as long as you're comfortable with the feeling that she doesn't fight against it, that she knows how to soften the chambon, then yes, experiment with that. Shorten it a little bit and see if you can get some better results. See how close you are to her right there? Now you're starting to let her out. That's more what I was talking about. Stay closer to her so she pays a little bit more attention, and then you'll be able to keep her more consistently out on the end of the lunge line. And of course, we don't want the circle to get really, really small, so you can walk with her. And again, if she starts to come up, just quit walking. She'll, what we call, run into the end of your lunge line. So you always want the reaction to be because she's come forward, not so much that you're pulling anything towards you or backwards. So when the head comes up, quit walking and just stand there and close your hand and passively resist with your hand. And again, that's why I recommend that you hold the lunge line like you do your reins, where they come under your hand and then up through where your thumb and your forefinger is. And why I say that is because the lunging is like riding. We're trying to create a lot of the same situation that we will ask of the horse when we're on its back. So, of course, your lunge whip is your leg, your lunge line is your reins. So if you get used to that feel and that contact and using those muscles in your arm where you use your tricep more than you use your bicep, if you're pulling, you're using a lot of your bicep. But if you're simply stopping and resisting with your hand, you're using your tricep. And that's the muscle you want to use when you're riding. So if you hold your lunge line like you do your reins, then that's going to feel a lot more familiar to you too. So again, I come back to the description of side reins. If you look at side reins on a horse and they're properly adjusted, you can send the horse forward into the side reins, and the side reins can't pull back at all. They just stop. They stop how far forward the energy goes, and it helps to create that circle of energy that starts from the hind leg over the back, through the neck, soften pull, soften jaw, into the hand. So this is why I'm also thinking side reins might be good for her. Even if you have them long, if you bring the nose in and as you pushing her forward and through, then she goes into that outside rein, the outside side rein. And that starts to teach her what's your honor also of that inside leg to outside rein. So if you get her to bend correctly, you'll see how much the side rein will soften and be loose on the inside, but she goes into that outside rein. That's exactly what we're trying to recreate when we ride. And that seems to be one of the more difficult things for people to grasp, is that you don't turn them with that inside rein. Now, you may have to when you're first starting and you point the nose the direction you want to go, but you eventually then want to get the horse to yield to the inside leg, or on the lunge line, your whip, yield outward into the contact on the outside. So side reins are also very valuable too. But once again, I don't know this horse. You know the horse, of course, better, Sonja. And if you have, if you're concerned that she'll duck behind the contact, then yes, it might be better to stick with the chambon. But again, as I'm saying, your chambon isn't doing much at this point. So everything you're getting is more that the contact that you have with her mouth. So don't be afraid to hit a few bad notes when you're trying to create this music. You'll start to hit more and more right notes, and pretty soon you'll have this beautiful sonata, and that's what we're looking for. And that's when it really, really starts to get lovely. The horse just gets in rhythm, starts to swing, stays supple. You can see how relaxed and good that they feel. And they get so much lighter to the touch. They can bend easier because their back is lifted. And also, I want to comment that you're going to the right now, which she's doing quite good for, especially a thoroughbred if she came off the track, because so often they work mostly to the left, and they can have a lot of difficulty going to the right because their body just doesn't bend to the right as well. And one of the theories, I'll take the time to explain here because I deal with it with the saddle fitting, is that the larger part of the digestive system is in the right side of the horse. So they always want to swing as they're grazing, they always want to swing their belly out to the right, which means they put their left leg forward. And if you think about how a horse is designed biomechanically, when the leg goes forward, the shoulder blade is going backwards. So this can create this uneven shoulder because the shoulder is not connected by a clavicle. They're free floating. It's a free floating joint. It's a very unique joint. It's kept there by the tendons and ligaments and the muscling. So the horse can muscle in two different ways from side to side. And they also can have, if they are more left dominant like that, they can develop a bigger shoulder on the left And it is actually, if you look over the top of the horse and feel where the shoulder blades are, you'll often find the right shoulder blade is further forward. Now, this has a lot to do with saddle fitting, but it also kind of helps explain the horse's one-sidedness. And most horses can bend easier to the left than the right because of that situation of always wanting to swing their belly to the outside. So to take that a little bit further, is that if they always have their left leg forward, and they did research with this in Germany, that 17 hours out of 24, horses stepped with their left leg forward, always when they're grazing, more often than the right. So if you think about how often we see low heel, long toe on the left and short toe and high heel on the right, that makes even more sense. So if you agree with this theory, and if you think about it, the horse is spending many more hours with the spine bent to the left. So that side is very bendable for the rider. But then when you go to bend it to the right, it can be very difficult. They're very stiff. That's their stiff side. And it's not that they're intending to be like that. It's just their body is so easy of going the other way. It's just like us trying to brush our teeth with the left hand. It's very awkward. Or even as you're shoveling your stall out or whatever, try changing the diagonal and your other hand, and you'll find how uncomfortable it is. And that's what it's like for the horses. So we have to be very patient as we're developing this bendability to the right as well. They tend to want to lean on that right rein. They fall into the right. And so it's, you're really ahead of the game here. She's doing quite well. But it's that double-edged sword, is that if you can get her to stretch even deeper, she'll be able to bend even better. And I'm sure that Will has explained that. When the horse really gets stretched and lifts up the back, the vertebrae separate, and the horse through the middle of its body becomes much more bendable. So if you can get that happening on any horse, it always helps them to be able to move and bend better, and it can really help that right side. Oh, that was a nice stretch there, but just still lacking the impulsion. So you need to play with that a little bit. And like I said, use the size of your circle to see if you can convince her not to speed off in it. And when she slows down, then you can either ask her to walk to reward her for a job well done. Again, we're always looking for a way to reward the horse. And sometimes we have to look pretty hard because sometimes they're being pretty fractious or not listening. So we may ask for a lot, but then realize we're going to have to settle for a little more than we might have hoped we got that day. So the horse always dictates how much we do that day. And it's really tough sometimes when they get really good. Like the other day, I had a really big breakthrough with my horse, and it was really hard to just say, get off. You need to stop. The horse did better than you've ever gotten. Get off. That's her biggest reward, because now you've made her life easier. Same with the size of the circle. Make the life easier by letting the circle get bigger, but when she's not listening or you're not getting your point across, then make her work a little harder by making the circle smaller. And then again, reward her by either walking or letting the circle get bigger. So I just worked with a horse today that was, actually I was there for a saddle fit, and that's what I did. When he finally stretched, it was difficult to get him to stretch. When he finally did, then I let him walk. Let him stretch in the walk, ask for the trot again, and then when he stretches, and it was only a few steps of stretch, but if they're struggling with it, then you need to reward them. They need to feel like they're getting it right, and it helps for them to understand. And of course, you can use your voice. Horses realize when you're happy with what they've done, but there's nothing like either getting off of them when they've done something spectacular or making their job easy and their life easier. Now, I really think that if you can get this horse to stretch better, she's going to love it down there, and that's going to be her favorite place to go. But that up and down is a horse not really coming through into the contact. So again, I'll say it, that you're trying to create the impulsion from behind, not running. There's a fine line between a horse going too slow, but then a horse running and getting too fast, and they get out of balance and they get out of rhythm. You want a little more than you have here, but you don't want the running. And from what I understand, you often get the running. So again, use the size of the circle. See if you can convince her not to. But do be careful, because you are on a little uneven footing. So you wouldn't want them to slip too much and fall. that can happen. Horses get really excited and take off, and they'll slide right out from underneath themselves. There, nice stretch there. That's what you want right there. So if you were a little closer to her, you could control that and be quicker about controlling it, because you've got a more feel in your line. But that stretch you got in the walk was great. It could have used a slightly more impulsion possibly, but she's got a nice walk. When you watch her walk and she's starting to swing over her back better, she's got a nice big open walk, especially for a thoroughbred. So very nice. If you can just get that in the trot, you're well on your way. Now, I don't know if this is the precursor to riding her. I'm sorry, Will knows your situation better than I, but you're doing the right thing. I mean, I really wouldn't be worried about getting on her until everything gets a lot better. Sorry, I have a cat attacking me here. There, just a little more impulsion, and feel a little bit more comfortable about taking a little more contact, and not a constant contact, but a little more asking of her to soften to the inside. Sometimes just think of it as the nose coming in more on the circle, or as she gets better, you can think of it more as a shoulder in, that you can use your whip to send the, I'm sorry, this cat is mauling me. Let go. We have a very wild cat here. So always keep in mind that the horse tells us how strong of an aid we need to give. If they ignore what we've done, then we need to use a stronger aid until they respond in the way we want, and then we can reward it. I'll say it again, we're always looking for some way to reward the horse. So if she's not, it looks like she's actually quite sensitive and she's answering very easily to you, then you're giving the correct amount of an aid, but being a little bit more consistent and catching a little bit sooner could be very helpful. Some horses are very, very light, and you can just, it's so nice because you can just, this light squeezes will work, but some horses are, like we were working with a Frisian, and you have to use a lot more than that. And it's just their nature or their sensitivity. And you just have to let them tell you how much you use. You'll know when you use too much, especially on a thoroughbred. There, that was getting a little better. But again, she will stay more consistent if you get her to actually really connect into the bridle a little bit better. So again, it's a little bit more impulsion, and then capturing that energy that you create. That's what we're always trying to do. Even when we ride them, we create this energy from behind. That's the motor. And it travels up under our seat, through the neck, soften pull, soften jaw, into our hands. And our hands just, the reins really, when it goes really good, it just limits where that energy is. So if you want a stretch, then you just let your hands forward and the energy then goes down and out. And then if you want collection, then the length of your rein tells the horse where the energy is to go. It's to come up, not so much forward. So we can start teaching all of that stuff on the ground with the lunge line. And she may be a good candidate to work in hand. That's also very helpful, teaching her to get into the outside rein. There. Now a little bit pokey in the walk. Walk is really hard gait to work on though. But see, she's got a nice swingy walk though. There we go. And we do use our voices. Teaching them to respond to walk, trot, canter, whatever words you want to use is very helpful. I say anything that helps the horse understand what you're trying to do and what you're asking for. Now, of course, if you show, you're not supposed to use your voice, and at that time you probably shouldn't have to. There we go. There. Right there. So because she looks so sensitive, so when she starts to come out of that, then just squeeze your hand a little bit or stop walking, let her run into it. But the main part of your problem is not enough impulsion coming from behind. But thank you so much for submitting this. And now if there's anything that you've gotten confused or I haven't explained it very well, please feel free to shoot me an email. and I'm happy to answer it, and so I can clarify it if there's some confusion. And I do hope that we see the next installment. And the next installment would be is that you've got her coming and moving through really great. And then the next step would be to get on her, see if you can get the same thing. But she does look like she could spend a little more time doing this before getting on and getting her back a little stronger. But good luck with that. And we hope to hear back from you in the future.